You are listening to Kaio Conversations, a podcast about anything and everything that matters to Chi Omegas.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Leslie Harrington, CEO for Chi Omega, and we are joined today by Elissa Costello, a 2012 initiate of Kappa Mu chapter at Sacred Heart University in Connecticut. Elissa is a licensed clinical social worker, and her focus is on women's health, life transitions, and perinatal mental health. She received her BSW from Sacred Heart University, where she is a founding member of Kappa Mu chapter of Chi Omega. And she received her MSW from Barry University in Miami, Florida. Elissa has served as the new member advisor at Kappa Mu, and she's now the personnel advisor. She's dedicated to promoting mental health and wellness within the chapter and in the campus community. She lives in Connecticut with her husband, Matt, and their dog, Sully. So, Sister Elissa, we are so honored and thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we are so excited to hear from you. Let's start with your Chi Omega experience. I told everybody you were a founding member, and I remember when Kappa Mu chapter was started not that long ago. Tell us what made you want to join a brand spanking new sorority on your campus.
So I wasn't interested in Greek life until I heard that Chi Omega was coming to Sacred Heart. And my best friend, who is also my roommate, was really interested in going through recruitment. And I kind of said, okay, I'll go through it with you. And Chi Omega had their informational session the first night of recruitment. And I just fell in love with all the women who came to represent the organization. I was just so excited. I loved the purposes and I loved the philanthropy as well.
Well, I'm so glad you did. What would you say once you joined Kappa Mu? What was your favorite Chi Omega memory from your time there?
So I really loved having our national consultants come and visit. And it was so great to hear about their memories in Chi Omega and also to kind of share our campus with them and show them what we loved about Sacred Heart. And a lot of the times when our chapter was first starting, we were able to have them for our date nights and our formals. They got to participate in those things with us. And it was nice to be able to build those connections that I still have today.
Wonderful. So they were able to blend right in with you guys then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now you are a licensed clinical social worker. I know that sort of certification can kind of come in many different forms. What does your typical day entail and what are your specialties there?
Yeah, so my typical day is I have my own private practice. So I make my own schedule, which has been really nice. I can kind of alter my day according to the clients that I'm seeing. So if I'm seeing young adults who are in college, I can kind of schedule my day around their schedule. And then if I'm seeing families at night, I can also alter it to that as well. And so who I see are a lot of young adults, a lot of college students who are getting ready to graduate and go on to the next stage of their life. And we kind of talk about what's next and how do I fit in the world and what can I do to make a difference and kind of take my college experience that I've had, that I've loved, and carry it on into the real world.
Well, that's a big question. And I know it's a long conversation when you sit down with these folks, especially now. How would you say the pandemic has affected your work? And how do you think the stress of it all is manifesting in women's mental health really in general?
So since the pandemic, I've been extraordinarily busy. I don't remember the last time I had a break. And I love my job, so working doesn't always seem like working. I think how the pandemic has taken a toll on women's mental health, especially, is like a loss of identity. So many things were taken away during the pandemic. And especially for college students and seniors, they missed a lot of these special moments that they don't get back. And So it's kind of doing some grief work too, and trying to figure out, you know, how do I mourn the things that I lost, and how do I move forward and still remain optimistic of all the things that I dreamed of and worked hard for. I think the pandemic also increased just stressors and fear. And so a lot of people kind of developed anxiety, and we have to work through that and kind of recognize that this is for a period of time in our life, and that we can move forward, and that this anxiety isn't going to be there forever, and it's very temporary.
I know it is temporary, but I feel that because sometimes it doesn't feel temporary. And I like how you describe it and frame it around grief. You almost have to kind of mourn what you really had planned for those 2 years and really reinvent yourself. Is that kind of the thought process and the conversation that you guys have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also framing it in a way of reinventing ourselves is not always a bad thing. We're constantly changing and growing, and we're not the same people who we are when we think about like increments of 5 years at a time.
Sure.
5 years ago, I was not this far in my career, and I wasn't doing the things that bring me the most joy now. And if you asked me 5 years ago, would I be happy with what I'm doing now? The answer might not have been yes, but it is now. And so I think when we view change and readjusting as growth, it's a way more beautiful thing.
Sure is. I know that we evolve a lot over 5 years in our personal development, and certainly almost more so, more quickly at that age, even.
Yes. And I like to think of, especially for the college students that I see, I like to talk about change in increments of 5, because they can see it as 4 years in your undergraduate and then that transitional year after. So when they think about it in that span of time, your college experience goes by when you blink,
Yes.
It just goes that fast. So when you think about change in that respect, 5 years doesn't seem that long.
That's right. Let's talk about the collegiate women. You serve as a chapter advisor. We know advisors teach us so many things, but what would you say you have learned from the members of Kappa Mu?
The sisters in Kappa Mu are amazing. I find them to be incredibly inclusive and hardworking and empathetic. And all of these qualities are things I admire in them. They are determined. And when they set a goal, they do it. They wanted to raise $10,000 last year in their spring semester.
Wow.
And they raised $30,000.
They tripled it.
They tripled it. And that was with them home and doing their classes online. And they teach me so much about sisterhood that no other experience could ever teach me. The way they love each other, the way they care for each other is something that I want to mimic in my day-to-day life because of them.
I would venture to guess, Elissa, that you see a little bit of yourself in them, do you?
I mean, I'd like to hope so, especially with my advisees.
I think that to be true. Absolutely. Oftentimes in my role, I hear our members say that they get really nervous talking about mental health because they don't feel qualified to give advice and certainly not to treat. And you and I both know that most of them really aren't qualified to do either one of those things, but they do know how to be good sisters and good friends. So what are some things that we can do when a sister or friend reveals to us that they're struggling, maybe?
Yeah, I think community is a huge part of that. There is power in numbers. There's power in knowing that you're not alone and feeling whatever way you're feeling. And I think that's what we all look for. And especially our collegiate sisters, is that they want to know that somebody else feels the way that they feel. And one conversation we have with our Kappa Mu sisters, and it actually came from going to firesides. We went to one of the mental health conversations, and we got these cards at the end. And I don't know if you recall this or not, but they gave each of us a card that says, I'll keep her welfare ever at heart because I said I would.
Yes.
And that is something that I have drilled into their heads to say that, when you joined Chi Omega, that's what you also joined to do. And, keeping your sister's welfare ever at heart means checking in, means making sure that nobody walks through any tough time alone, and making sure that somebody always has someone.
Because I said I would. I mean, we did. We all made a pact to each other that we would check in. And using that line from the symphony written in 1900, right? It still rings true, and it never really becomes irrelevant. Her welfare ever at heart. We know exactly what that means. And for those listening that don't know, Fireside's leadership training is Chi Omega's annual officer training. And that's what Elissa's talking about. We are talking about mental health, well-being, and being just that, a good sister and a friend every year with our women. Well, do you have any hot tips that you can give our listeners on keeping their mental well-being in check?
Yeah, absolutely. I think keeping your mind, body, and your soul in check on a daily basis is so important to your overall mental health. I think if you can find comfortable and passionate ways to move your body, if you can find ways to kind of reflect the thoughts in your head by journaling, by listening to podcasts and music, I think that's a great way to maintain your mental health.
Like this
also
one.
Yes, absolutely. And finding good foods to eat, finding good company, all of those things, while they might seem so small, they make a huge difference. Our mind and body are connected, and if we don't take care of one or the other, we're going to fall into this trap of feeling burnt out and overwhelmed and tired. And so kind of this complete overall integrated wellness approach, I think, is the best way to keep tabs, in the easiest way, because they're things that we do in our day-to-day basis.
That's right. I do that even. I mean, when I feel kind of stressed out, where that feeling when you feel out of control a little bit, that you're totally disorganized. Sometimes I will just sit down and I'll be like, okay, it is Wednesday morning. What does a successful Wednesday look like for me? Because I'm not going to move mountains today, probably, because it's just a random Wednesday. But what does that look like for me? And how can I break it down to just what can I do today to be a good me? So that's maybe a tip on how to journal.
Yes, absolutely. And there's this book I read, and it talks about if we can do something every day that's 1% better than the day before, we're making progress.
I know in the pandemic, I felt like if I just went outside for a little bit, sometimes even today, we're back at the office, but if I leave for lunch and come back, it could be 15 minutes, but I just like that little tiny bit of time to recharge.
Yeah, it rejuvenates you so much, and it's 15 minutes.
Doesn't have to be epic.
No, not at all.
How do you think your life, Elissa, would have been different if you didn't join Chi Omega?
I think I would have been really lonely. I think as much as I needed Chi Omega when I was in college, I've needed it 10 times more out of college.
Really?
I've needed my sisters in some of the hardest periods of my life and some of the best years of my life. I've had sisters at my weddings, and I've been a part of weddings for my sisters. I've watched some of my sisters have babies and new jobs. And, I think even advising, I think some of my biggest role models were my advisors when I was in college, and have given me wisdom beyond wisdom of being an advisor now, and just how to live my life according to our purposes every day. Because we're Chi Omegas all the time. There's never a time that we're not. And I that's an honor and a privilege that I hold dear to my heart.
I think we all do. Chi Omega is kind of your last name once you join this organization, and you have a network of sisters everywhere that are ready to support you. And I'm so glad that you continue to be involved after graduation, because sometimes that's the best part, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I didn't make that choice, I would have never had some of the opportunities that have come my way, and I wouldn't be able to pay it forward in the way that I do.
Do you remember any of your advisors from when you were an undergraduate?
Yeah. One of my advisors, I'm sure you know her. Her name is Lori Hill.
I know her well. She's a pie like me.
Yeah. Lori Hill, honestly, if I could name the top 5 women who have changed my life, she is right up there. I think she is incredible.
She's great. She is one of those women that guides you and shows you all angles of a conflict or a dilemma. And, she doesn't tell you what to do, but she gives you the tools to figure it out on your own, which I really appreciate. She does that for me sometimes.
Absolutely. And she can see potential in you before you ever see it in yourself.
Yes, she builds you up and she makes you confident when you weren't before.
Yes.
Well, what else would you like all of Chi Omega Nation to know today? Do you have any parting advice for us? Any therapy you can give us?
I think hold yourselves in the highest regard. Follow our symphony. It is one of those things where there's any line in that symphony can apply to any day of the week, any time period that you're going through, and reach out. And don't be afraid to reach out to your sisters, to anybody. I think there is so many sisters around the world. Any city, any town that you go to, I am certain you can find somebody who knows a Chi Omega, who is a Chi Omega, and will open and welcome you with open arms. I think we are so scared to ask for help sometimes, and we internalize so many things that if we were just a little bit more open and a little bit more willing to be vulnerable, we would find that there's a lot of love on the other side of that.
I think you're right. In fact, I know you're right. And I think that is great parting advice. I have really loved getting to know you better and so happy you decided to share time with us today and letting us hear your Chi Omega story. I feel like after talking to you, we all feel like we can be a little bit more open and a little bit more vulnerable, right? For greater happiness.
Yes, I hope so.
Well, thank you, Elissa. And thank you, everyone, for listening today. And stay tuned for more Chi conversations coming your way. Also, if you have any podcast ideas or notable guests that you'd like to hear from on Chi conversations, please just email us at chiomega@chiomega.com. And always stay tuned to Chi Omega's social media channels so that you can be with us next time. Thank you.